Welcome back to Twin Chat. We are excited you are here to join us as we have real conversations with real people focusing on well being. Hi, I'm Kenan McCumber, mom of two and teacher living in Bend, Oregon.
Hi, I'm Steph Kafori, mom of three, a life coach living in sunny Hawaii. And we have Susanne Graf today. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, Suzanne.
So, Suzanne, we're so happy you're here. And I'm going to tell everyone a little bit about you. So, Suzanne teaches art and is head of the art department at the Vail Mountain School. She's also an art therapist at the Vail Mind Center. She has nearly 20 years of experience as an art educator and 15 of those as an art therapist. Suzanne has worked with a range of ages and populations. Today, we're going to talk with Suzanne about her journey starting the Vail Mind Center, a pediatric behavioral and mental health center.
So, Suzanne and I met at Colorado College and immediately became best friends. Suzanne introduced me to thrift store shopping, making hemp necklaces, and an artistic side I never knew I had. Suzanne, you have been such an incredible friend and influence in my life, and I just love and care about you so much. And I'm just really happy that you're here today with us to share your journey. Before we launch into our chat, though, would you please start with the twin story?
Sure. Actually, I was going to tell a different story, but listening to your intro, one popped into my head. And so Kenan and I met in college. We lived across the hall from each other in the dorms. And I thought she was super cool and really just such a nice person. And, sort of like what it's like to be a freshman in college and kind of not knowing, getting your bearings. And she was this kind of beacon and it was just awesome. And I remember one day I knew she had a sister. I did not know they were twins. And I think there was like a photograph in her dorm room of like two of like her and Steph together, but I couldn't really tell. One had a hat on. And so one day it's like typical college. It's like the knock, knock, open the door. So knock, knock, open the door. And Kenan is up on the top bunk and she's like, hi. And I was like, hi. And something felt a little off, but I wasn't quite sure. I was like, my brain was seeing Kenan, but it didn't feel quite right. And then Stephanie was totally playing it off like she was Kenan, and she had never met me. She didn't know who I was, like just walking into the room. And then at one point, Kenan comes like around the corner into the room, and I kind of had one of those moments where I was like, what is going on? And then Stephanie cracks up and Kenan cracks up. And I was like, I did not know. And I mean, I think we had been friends for a few months before Stephanie came and visited. So either I just wasn't super observant in terms of who your sister was, which is probably pretty likely. But that was my first meeting of Stephanie and having the twins together. So
Oh, Suzanne.
and then Stephanie came and took a semester of school, and we did some performance art together. It was really fun. I had never done performance art, and I don't think they had either. So never really did any sense. So
No, it was a hard class. And we got I was grateful because I got an art credit for it.
yeah, it was intense. I can't remember what was his name, the professor. Do you remember?
Remember his name either.
Yeah.
He was great. He was a visiting professor, though. I think he was a really famous performance artist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Suzanne really did introduce both Stephanie and myself to, again, that artistic side because Suzanne is an amazing artist in so many different mediums. And I do want you to talk about that with us today. But I do want to start, though, Suzanne, with, as Stephanie mentioned, you recently opened the Vail Mind Center in Vail, Colorado, where you live. And can you please tell us about your center?
Yeah. So it really, is my husband who pushed for it. And that to me, he's a business person and an entrepreneur. And to me, that whole kind of idea of something kind of as large as it is was very intimidating to me. And, you know, as an artist, I was like, I have no idea. So he really handles most of the clinic, but I do art therapy there. I help design the space. So we, in our little valley, I mean, when we are at peak tourist season right now, skiers are here. We have, you know, tens of thousands of 30,000 people or something on any given day. But in terms of full-time residents, we're pretty small town, village. And then we have this sort of greater valley that includes Edwards and Avon and Eagle. And there were very few services, mental health services, especially for pediatrics. And I'm a mom of 3 kids, and one of my children has some pretty significant special needs. And when we were looking for services, so we had come from New York, and I had worked in New York City for 10 years, working with special needs populations, working with I interned at an alternative youth center with LGBTQ teens. And, you know, there were a lot of resources in the city, and there was a lot of understanding of children who are not neurotypical and supports. And I worked in a school where, 40% of our population had IEPs. And so they had special needs. And we had in the school, we had speech language pathologists, we had occupational therapists, we had a psychologist, we had social workers. I was working as an art teacher, went to grad school to become an art therapist. Then I would do art therapy, creating a therapeutic classroom for these kids. So I was coming from an environment in an educational setting that had all of these really great supports into an educational setting. The public schools here have very few resources. It's gotten better now. Certainly in the past 6 years, it has gotten better. But when our child was entering school, you know, it was very difficult. There was like one occupational therapist that we could find, and she had a wait list of 6 months. And, you know, if you have a child with special needs, it's like, we need those services now. We can't wait 6 months, you know, because early intervention, as we know, is very key. So, you know, my husband is a real kind of go-getter. And if he sees a space that needs an opportunity, or, you know, he just jumps in. There's no hesitation. And so I don't know that it would have happened, certainly with just, you know, me. But he, you know, was like, we need to provide this service. It's a lacking, a huge void in this community. So I found the space, and we were able to purchase a space that has, you know, then we designed a climbing wall and a full sensory gym. So children, pediatrics, we say 0 to 21. Most of the kids using the sensory gym are usually 8 and under. So we have a full sensory gym. We have attached to that a full huge art studio where I can do group art therapy, individual art therapy. We do have a clinical director who's a psychologist, so she has a space to do educational testing and psych evals. And then we have a space for speech language pathologists, and our OTs have a separate office space. A lot of their treatment happens in the sensory gym, and we offer co-treatments. So it's really a comprehensive, a team of therapists. So you can have, you know, that was the other thing, is a lot of providers, they work kind of siloed in private practice, and it's not as comprehensive as a lot of these kids need. You need to have different disciplines talking to each other and really kind of figuring out the best path forward to meeting the goals and the child's needs. So that, you know, is kind of what motivated our own journey, our personal journey. I mean, I think oftentimes that's how it starts, where something that's very deep, that's very personal, kind of opens your eyes to a greater need. So that's kind of why we started what we did, what we have built. And we opened in July of 2019. So, and then COVID hit. And fortunately, a lot of our clientele could benefit from telehealth. So we were able to pivot about 75% of our clientele to telehealth. And then because we're an essential business and some of our clients really can't benefit, severe ASD or Down syndrome. I mean, that's really tricky to service those kids via telehealth. So we were able to open again in person with pretty strict COVID precautions or COVID measures. So yeah, and
Susanne, let me ask you, I have so many questions I want to ask you, but one, is this kind of center, do other cities have this? Is this typical? And if it is, did you model your center around something, or is this innovative and new? Because I know multidisciplinary care is very important and it's becoming more of the norm, but I've heard of it more like for cancer care, for instance, right? So you want to make sure all your doctors are talking to each other so that you're set up for the best care and the best healing possible. But I've never heard it for pediatric mental health. And so tell us a little bit more about that. Is this a new innovative space that you guys are just sort of figuring out?
I don't think it's new, but I don't think a lot of places exist. I know Denver is the closest city to us. And even there, I don't know of any place that offers so many disciplines together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, so I don't think it's new, but I don't think it's common,
Mm-hmm.
So that was a huge motivator, just knowing all the services that our child needed and being able to, it's like a one-stop shop kind of thing and even, different clinicians can be working together, which is a great way to collaborate with a client, and they may notice something that you don't notice, and then you can have a deeper conversation about, I'm wondering, why this happened or how we can, better meet this need. So that collaboration, I think, is really key, and to have more than just one set of eyes on a child.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
At the same time.
One thing I wanted to touch back on with what you mentioned was starting this from a place of a need that you found for your own child, right? And so many times it's, we've talked, Kenan and I have talked about passion projects and how passion projects lead to these businesses that you create. And what I talk to so many of my coaching clients about is coming from a space of authenticity and what brings you joy and what brings you happiness. And then when you're in that flow of that river, things start happening and doors start opening, and you meet someone who can help you or who knows of a contact, and you're like going down that path. And it's not to say that obstacles don't arise, because I'm sure there were so many things that you're like, how are we going to overcome this? And I know a big thing for you guys in the beginning was, how do we find this space? And then you find this space, and then I'm curious too how you found these clinicians, and you're in this small town, and you have, it sounds like, I think you mentioned to Kenan and I beforehand, you have 6 to 7 clinicians, and that's, I'm curious, what was the process of finding these people and bringing them to your community, and what challenges and what successes have you experienced?
So because we are living in a resort, one of the big kind of roadblocks was housing. It's very expensive and there's not a lot of it. And so we were able to provide employee housing. So we have our clinicians are able to live here, and that allows us to really search, do really kind of cast a wide net and bring up really good clinicians, because it's a beautiful place. It's the mountains, there's skiing, there's a rich outdoor life here, but it can be very cost prohibitive. And so, when being the chair of the Vail Mountain School, one of the things that school provides is employee housing. And so they knew early on that that's one of the things you need to do if you want to have, good teachers. So we also discovered that it's very difficult to even rent a place and find housing. It's a small housing stock here. So that was one of the big challenges. And we knew that right away. We knew that was going to be a challenge. So as we were able to get the space, we were at the same time looking for appropriate and adequate employee housing for our clinicians. And we do also have some clinicians who kind of split their time, because we are a small population. So that's another tricky thing, is do we have enough clientele, enough kids with needs to fill all of these clinician schedules full time? And not always. So oftentimes we have some full-time clinicians, and then we have some who split their time between. So we have a psychologist who's our clinical director, and she spends a couple days down in Denver, and then she comes up and spends a couple days up here in the mountains, and she splits her time that way. So that's the other way we've kind of been able to make it work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Susanne, I think that big piece of not only attracting, but being able to retain.
Yeah.
When you were talking about the school also in where you work, that was, you could look at that as a model, which was great to say, oh, they can get the best teachers and keep them because they're able to provide the housing, and then take that model to your clinic as well. Susanne, I'm thinking about you and the work that you do, being a teacher, of course, myself full-time, that's a huge amount of a time commitment, right? So you're teaching full-time and you're also working at the clinic. How do you do it?
Well, I have a small clientele at the clinic right now, and my teaching, so this is my 6th year at the Vail Mountain School, and it's my 6th year being the chair of the department. So, there are other responsibilities that come with that in addition, and we are a K through 12 school. And this is the first year I haven't taught kindergarten, but I like to say I bookend our students. So I would teach the kindergartners, and then I also teach our AP students. And I do find a lot of joy in that, and I find it varies my day. I'm not always with the little kids. I'm also not always with the adolescents. So it adds some variety. And as you know, teaching, there's no 2 days are ever the same. So that's lovely. However, I have decided that this is my last year being at the Vail Mountain School. I think it was something I've been thinking about for quite some time. And then, COVID happened. We were all remote. And now we've actually been in person from the very beginning of school. And it's very challenging. And I thought, there's more, I have more potential. I don't know how to say it, but like there's something more. I have this kind of nagging voice saying, I want to focus on my own artwork again. I constantly kind of drift into my artwork, and then something pulls me away. And it's whether it be having children, that's been the big one in the past 10 years. It's having children, raising children, and then teaching. And so I want to get back into making my art. I really don't 10 years from now want to look back and say, oh my gosh, what if I had made a change then? What could I be doing now? So there's a lot of other things that I want to be doing. I want to, as you know, a teaching day, you're physically teaching or at school from 7:45 until 3:45, and then oftentimes it extends into your day at home. And whatever that looks like, grading papers, making curriculum. So it's kind of all consuming. So I wanted to make a change. And one of the things I really want to do is start to offer caregiver and me groups. So I know, like, mommy and me music classes, or going and doing the read alouds at the library. And oftentimes families with kids with special needs don't have the luxury to take their kids to anything like that because of disruptive behaviors, or whatever it is. So I want to offer social groups that are caregiver and me groups, where a family member can bring a child and feel completely comfortable. If that kid is going to throw a tantrum, scream, yell, whatever it is, it's a safe space for that family, and to know that there's no judgment, that is okay, and that the child is welcome and accepted, and so are they as their caregiver. So that's one of the things I want to do, and I want to be able to open my schedule up. Right now I have I go, I'm at the school, and then I leave school and I go to our clinic, and I see clients there for about 2 hours. And, and then it's like, what happens with my own family? I feel like I'm giving and giving and giving so much to other children, and then I feel like my own children are kind of neglected. It's like the cobbler whose children wear no shoes, So I just need time to do that. So you kind of have caught me in this a place of transition in my life. So we'll see in 2-3 years where I'm at. Maybe we should wait to do this.
Back on the show, right? You'll come back to Twin Chat and tell us how this has evolved.
Yeah.
But Susanne, I just want to say one thing, Kenan, and then I want you to continue with your thought. But what a great thing to also listen to yourself, right? And to the audience at large, like, when you really sit with it, like, I'm not finding that joy right now in the teaching, right? I'm not finding that spark that I had. And, I don't want to do this right now. And it's not to say you could get back into it in the future if you wanted to, but that doesn't matter. That's like long ways off. But honoring that right now, that this is what's moving me. I'm following that movement. I'm following what I need to do for myself, and what an amazing next step you want to take. I mean, I'm listening to this and I'm like, there is such a need for this, because when people feel safe, right? And I talk a lot about being extraordinary, right? And that we don't want to label kids as abnormal, and these extraordinary kids, and we're all extraordinary, right? Because we are all unique and different, but letting them have a space and a venue, and letting children, who have behavioral differences, letting them be who they are without judgment, and that the caregivers don't feel judgment. And that is a sacred, safe space. That is something that I think I'm just excited to see how this takes off and how it snowballs, and hopefully will be adopted by other places and other cities, because there is a huge need. And I just say thank you, Susanne. Thank you for giving your time and your energy and your passion and your creativity, because I think that when you fill that void, it's like you build it, they will come. Oh, Suzanne's got a little person coming in.
No, he's coming down with a peanut butter spoon.
Oh.
But he's gonna, I don't know what he's gonna go do, play drums or something. So
Kenan, you wanted to say something. What did you want to say?
No, I just wanted to say that also living in a place, a small town, Bend being, similar to Vail, a little bit bigger, but we also in the mental health field have a lot of the same challenges, where there's waiting lists to find therapists. And even if you can find the right person, you might be waiting 6 months or a year to get in. And so I just, I love that you saw a need and you thought about your community at large, not just your own immediate family, but what can we do for this community? And I'm just inspired and in awe of all that you and Paul have done. It is so incredible. And I am a detail oriented person, but I'm also not as big picture as someone like Paul to have a vision to create. I can't even imagine all that went in to starting this clinic. And I again, it just blows me away what you've done. What started as this dream and hope and want and need has now, you've built it into a real thriving piece of your community. And
Well,
again,
and part of it, it's a little bittersweet because we talked about this a little bit before, but because we are the owners of the clinic, our child can't actually receive services there because and I get it's unethical for, clinicians. However, it has opened us up to other great clinicians and other resources, and we have been able to source different uh, services for him. But it's sort of like we started this for our child, but he doesn't really get the benefit of it. In a way he does, and certainly, I always make art with my kids. And so I find, the art making itself, maybe not from their mother, I don't know, but just in general, art making is a very, therapeutic activity. So maybe they'd like to do it without their mother. I don't know.
yeah, Susanne, tell us a little bit more about how you do use art, about art therapy in general and how you use it as a form of healing and what your practice is like.
Sure. So, art therapy has, I think, fairly recently gotten some press and some, people have started to take notice. It's not that new of a therapeutic intervention. It's been around as like a recognized therapeutic intervention, I think since like the 30s. And one of the pioneers, there are two pioneers, Margaret Naumburg and Edith Kramer, are kind of seen as these two, not matriarchs, but the pioneers of art therapy. I was fortunate enough to work with Edith Kramer when I was in graduate school. She has since passed, but that was a long time ago. I'm, we're getting old. So so I was able to work with her, which was fantastic. And really, art therapy, can be used as a helpful diagnostic tool. And then it's also used as like almost catharsis with the art materials themselves, providing, they can be very calming. You can do things that are repetitive and regulating. And then also it's very expressive, right? So we can use it to express our feelings, our thoughts, and in a way that is oftentimes, I think, as an adult, if I give an adult a blank piece of paper, it can be anxiety producing. But I think that for children and for adults, you can approach it in a way that is very non-threatening. And I think oftentimes when people are, especially children, but all ages, talk therapy sometimes can feel a bit, not abrasive, but sometimes it's hard to find the words. You're not really sure how you're feeling about something. There might be some ambivalence there. And so the art therapy is a way to kind of access your emotions, cognition in a way that's, I call it the back door to your brain. It kind of, it also, it opens you up more in terms of all of these dialogues. And with kids, I actually work a lot through the metaphor. We create dolls and puppets and drawings and stories, and they're very, children have great imaginations, and they do reveal a lot about their interpersonal life and relationships and connections to others through these types of stories. And then clay I love to use, especially with children who have a lot of anger or aggression, because the clay as a medium withstands whatever. It's grounding, it's of the earth, literally. It is dirt. So it just, and it also kind of contains all of that, and you can change it and you can transform it, and it withstands anything. I've had kids, they just sit and punch it, or not punch it, but pound it and scrape it, and and it's still just clay. You can't destroy it. So that's a beautiful medium that I like to work with too. Just depending on what the need of the child is too, that makes a difference. And perspective taking, through that metaphor and story, we can start kind of learning how to hold another's perspective, which is key to interpersonal relationships, and kind of moving out of that more egocentric, narcissistic self. And so, does that answer it?
Oh, wow.
I
I
want
want to take art therapy.
Hi. Can I get one?
Well, that's kind of what Susanne did with us when we were in college, Kenan. We've just gotten a few more degrees, Suze.
Yeah. Just got a little more training.
But you think
I don't have necklaces. I've taken to crocheting as like a stress reliever, because it's kind of.
But people, like, you think about that as, adults right now, a lot of people are, to your point, they're taking up knitting or crocheting, those mindfulness art books.
Yeah.
And there's I think back, I mean, we didn't even know we were doing when we were making hemp necklaces or bead necklaces and bracelets, that was a form of therapy. It was a form of presence though, right? Because it's actually you're kind of taking your brain and you're like, I'm in this present moment. And we tend to dwell so much on the past, and the past we can't change, right? The future we don't know. Is all we have is this moment. And so when you can really be in art, I think it's a form of meditation. I think it's a form of, because it's presence, and it's when you're focusing on something and you get to like that tactile, that enjoyment, that passion, that creativity is the essence of being in the now.
Yeah, definitely.
And for kids, that's something that they can kind of shut down the rest of the noise that's going on around them. And for adults as well. So I think it's a beautiful thing. This is a wonderful service you're offering, Susanne. Wonderful.
Yeah, and one of the things I really have enjoyed is, the family, art therapy. So working with caregivers and the child, because for all of those reasons, and also for them to have a shared positive experience, and sort of this, to be in that space together, is very powerful. And I think it's surprising to me how often parents and caregivers are surprised by what their child can do. They're like, wow, or how they can be so expressive in this way. So, and it's like, usually the parents come in and they are terrified because it's this whole idea of like having to be creative. And I can't tell you how many times I hear, I'm not artistic. I can't even draw a stick figure. And it's like, come on, like that's not the definition of being artistic. And I always tell them it's just about the process. I don't, ultimately, I don't care what it looks like, nor should you. It's really about this process. So, and that kind of puts them at ease a little bit. And then once they get into it, they find it to be quite enjoyable. So.
Well, just a quick aside, when I used to teach yoga, people say, well, I can't do yoga. I can't touch my toes. And I'm like, no, that's not the point at all.
Well, the reality is, Steph, you and I can't touch our toes, and you were a yoga instructor.
You can't touch your toes. Oh, I don't think I can touch my
We're very unflexible.
I was always very good at yoga. This is totally unrelated, but because I'm like double jointed, so I'm not flexible. I'm a sloth. I try to exercise, but because I like how it makes me feel. But I always looked really good at yoga because I can like hyperextend things, but it's not good. I could like hyperextend my knee out and stuff. But so I looked like a model yoga student, but not other than genetics.
Kenan, you have the last question.
Yes. Okay, Susanne, before we sign off with you, what is one thing you do for self-care and maintaining well-being in your very busy life?
So it's not yoga. I do practice breathing. I do think that that is a practice that I work at, and I have found that to be really beneficial. And the other typical, my artwork that I make, that I consider my fine art is mostly painting, printmaking, and some sculpture. But for my self-care, I have I've taken a little room. It's not really big enough to be a bedroom. I think it used to be a bathroom or something, and I've made it into a clay studio. And so I love to throw pots on the wheel, and I find that to be incredibly calming and meditative. And I made my mug.
Yeah. Is it a fox?
It is. It's like a. So I like to carve into these things and do this. It's called sgraffito, and you put an oxide on top of the clay, and then you carve it away when it's leather hard before you fire it. So, and then I have this part of my I know it's practice. I always have tea for my clients, and I find it to be very kind of helps connect and, drink some tea. I think the English knew something about that. So I make mugs and bowls. I like to have, eating food out of things that I've made, and my kids. So all my cabinet is like all these mismatched bowls and things, but that's, they all have their favorite bowls that I've made. So I think that that's, what I do. It is artful for sure, but I do it, I think, more for meditation and self-care. So
love that. Susanne, as soon as it's safe for me to come to Colorado, I'm getting on a plane and I'm going to come and we're going to make some pottery.
Yeah.
I cannot wait. Well, we're just going to be together and probably talk nonstop, but
you can talk while making pottery. Sometimes my brain wires funny, so I have a hard time talking while I'm making art.
But let's hope that day comes sooner than later, because I miss you. I love you. Thank you so much for being here with us today. This has been such a highlight to get to connect with you and catch up and hear about all the incredible life-changing things you're doing. So thank you, Susanne.
Thank you, Susanne.
Thank
And you can find Susanne's at the Vail Mind Center. So it's vailmindcenter.com. So check it out, everyone. And we want to thank everyone, especially Susanne. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. And please subscribe and turn on your notifications. We release new episodes weekly, and you can find Twin Chat with S&K at our YouTube channel, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. You can also find us on Instagram at Rise Life Coach and online at riselifecoach.com. So everyone have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. You two are so beautiful.
You too.